The last thing I expected when I brought Maya home for Thanksgiving dinner was for my father to literally slam the door in her face. But what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about my family, my girlfriend, and the power dynamics that had been quietly shaping our lives for months. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I met Maya Rodriguez at a coffee shop in downtown Phoenix on a Tuesday morning in September. She was sitting alone at a corner table, wearing a faded denim jacket and ripped jeans, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun. She had this stack of legal documents spread out in front of her, and she was scribbling notes in the margins with a cheap ballpoint pen. What caught my attention wasn't just how beautiful she was, though she definitely was, but how focused. She seemed... Everyone else in the cafe was on their phones or laptops, but Maya was completely absorbed in whatever she was reading. When the barista called out her order, she didn't even look up. I was supposed to be meeting my friend Derek for our weekly coffee catch-up, but he'd canceled last minute. Instead of leaving, I found myself walking over to her table. "Mind if I sit?" I asked, gesturing to the empty chair across from her. She looked up and I noticed her eyes were this incredible shade of amber. "Sure," she said, but her tone suggested she wasn't thrilled about the interruption. "Kana," I said, extending my hand. She shook it briefly, then immediately went back to her papers. Most people would have taken the hint, but something about her intrigued me. "Heavy reading?" She glanced up again, and this time I caught the faintest smile. Just some boring legal stuff. Property disputes, contract violations, the usual exciting Tuesday morning material. "Are you a lawyer?" Something like that. She closed the folder and leaned back in her chair. "What about you, Connor? What brings you to Grounds for coffee at 10 in the morning on a Tuesday?" I explained that I worked in marketing for a tech startup downtown, that I usually met my friend Derek here, that I'd been coming to this same coffee shop for 3 years, but had never noticed her before. She listened with genuine interest, asking questions about my work, laughing at my stories about difficult clients. We talked for 2 hours. When she finally had to leave, she gave me her number written on a napkin. Our first real date was the following Saturday. I picked her up at an apartment complex on the east side of town. Not exactly the nicest neighborhood, but Maya didn't seem bothered by it. She was waiting outside when I arrived, wearing a simple black dress and those same beat-up sneakers from the coffee shop. "You clean up nice," I said as she got into my car. "Don't sound so surprised," she replied, but she was smiling. I'd made reservations at Meridian, one of the upscale restaurants in Scottsdale, the kind of place where my parents had taken me for my college graduation dinner. Maya looked around as we walked in, taking in the white tablecloths, the crystal wine glasses, suited servers moving efficiently between tables. "This is fancy," she said. "Too fancy?" "No, it's perfect. I just don't get dressed up very often." Throughout dinner, Maya was charming and funny, but I noticed she deflected most of my questions about her work. When I asked where she'd gone to law school, she said back east. When I asked what kind of law she practiced, she said a little bit of everything. When I asked about her family, she changed the subject entirely. I didn't push. Everyone had things they preferred to keep private, especially in the early stages of dating. Over the next few weeks, we fell into a comfortable routine. Maya would come over to my apartment in Tempe most evenings after work. She'd usually arrive around 7. Still in her work clothes, always simple, professional outfits that looked like they came from discount stores. We'd cook dinner together, watch movies, talk about everything except her job. She was brilliant. That much was obvious. She could discuss politics, literature, current events with the kind of insight that made me realize how shallow most of my previous conversations had been. She had opinions about everything and wasn't afraid to voice them, even when they contradicted mine. But there were also these moments of distance. Phone calls she'd step outside to take. Text messages that would make her frown and type furiously. For several minutes. Once, I caught her reading what looked like a police report, but when I asked about it, she just said it was work stuff and put it away. My friends liked her, though they found her a bit mysterious. Derek, in particular, couldn't figure out what she did for a living. She's definitely a lawyer, he said one night when we were out for drinks. But what kind? Why is she so secretive about it? Maybe she's a public defender, suggested our friend Marcus. Those jobs don't pay much, which would explain the apartment, the clothes. Or maybe she's in legal aid, added Sarah, helping low-income families with housing issues or something. I found myself making excuses for Maya's secrecy. But privately, I was starting to wonder too, not because I cared about money. I'd grown up with enough of it to know it wasn't everything. But because the mystery was becoming harder to ignore, the first real hint that something was off came in October. Maya and I were walking through Papago Park when we ran into my neighbor, Tom Brennan. Tom was a sergeant with the Phoenix Police Department, and he'd known me since I was a kid. "Connor," he called out, jogging over to us. "How's your mom doing? I haven't seen her at the grocery store lately." "She's good, just busy with her book club," I replied. "Tom, this is my girlfriend, Maya Rodriguez." Tom's expression changed the moment he heard her name. His eyes widened slightly, and he stood up straighter. "Maya Rodriguez," he repeated, like he was trying to place her. "To meet you, Maya," said politely, but I could tell she was uncomfortable. "Yeah, you too," Tom said, but he kept staring at her. "You look familiar. Do we know each other?" "I don't think so," Maya replied quickly. There was an awkward silence, and then Tom's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and said he had to go, but as he was walking away, I saw him turn back to look at Maya one more time. "That was weird," I said. "Police officers are always suspicious," Maya replied, but she seemed distracted for the rest of our walk. The second hint came a few days later. We were having dinner at a Mexican restaurant in Central Phoenix when Maya excused herself to take a phone call. She was gone for almost 15 minutes, and when she came back, she looked stressed. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Just work stuff, a case I'm working on." "What kind of case?" She hesitated. "It's complicated. A fraud investigation. Are you prosecuting or defending?" Another hesitation. "I can't really talk about it. Client confidentiality." I nodded, but something about her answer didn't sit right. The way she'd said, "fraud investigation," sounded more like she was describing it from the outside, not like someone actively working on it. By November, I was starting to feel like I was dating a ghost. Maya was wonderful when we were together, but I knew almost nothing concrete about her life. I'd never been to her apartment, never met any of her friends or colleagues, didn't know her middle name, her birthday, or even her favorite color. But I was falling for her anyway, maybe because of the mystery or maybe in spite of it. That's when I decided to invite her to Thanksgiving dinner with my family. My parents, Richard and Patricia Whitmore, lived in Paradise Valley in the same house. Where I'd grown up, it was a sprawling ranch-style home with a circular driveway, perfectly manicured landscaping, and a 3-car garage. My father was a successful orthopedic surgeon. My mother was a former pharmaceutical sales rep who now spent her time organizing charity galas and serving on the boards of various nonprofit organizations. They were good people, but they had certain expectations about the world and their place in it. They'd raised me to be polite, educated, and ambitious. They'd also raised me to understand that appearances mattered, that reputation was everything, and that the people you associated with reflected on your character. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. When I called to ask if I could bring Maya to dinner, my mother was thrilled, of course. "We've been dying to meet her," she said. "What does she do for work?" "She's in law," I said, which was technically true. "Oh, wonderful. What firm?" "I'm not sure exactly. She's pretty private about work stuff." There was a pause. "Well, I'm sure she's lovely. Should I set a place for 6 then? Will her parents be joining us?" "No, just Maya." "What about her family? Are they in town?" "I don't think so." Another pause. "Well, we'll make sure she feels welcome." I could hear the questions in my mother's voice, but I didn't have answers to give her. The morning of Thanksgiving, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. Not because I was nervous about Maya meeting my parents well. Not entirely, but because I'd been having doubts about our relationship for weeks. The secrecy, the deflected questions. the way she seemed to live in two completely separate worlds. I picked Maya up at her apartment complex at noon. She was waiting outside again, wearing a navy blue dress that looked like it might have come from a thrift store, paired with a cardigan that had seen better days. But she looked beautiful, and when she smiled at me, some of my anxiety melted. "Away? You sure about this?" she asked as we drove toward Paradise Valley. "About what?" "Bringing me to meet your parents? I get the feeling they have pretty high expectations." I glanced at her. "What makes you say that?" "The way you talk about them. The way you describe your childhood. The fact that you're worried about today." "I'm not worried." Maya laughed. "Connor, you've been fidgeting since you picked me up. Your hands are literally shaking." She was right. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. My parents are good people. They come from a certain world, you know? They have certain ideas about success, about what's important, and you're worried I don't fit those ideas. No, that's not what I'm saying. But wasn't it? Deep down, wasn't that exactly what I was worried about? Maya with her mysterious job, her East Side apartment, her secondhand clothes. What would my parents think? We pulled into my childhood driveway, and Maya whistled softly. "This is where you grew up." "Yeah, it's beautiful." She didn't sound intimidated, just impressed. "Your parents have done well for themselves." My mother opened the front door before we even reached it. She was wearing a cream-colored cashmere sweater and pearls, her blonde hair styled in the same bob she'd had for the past 15 years. Looked elegant and put together, the way she always did. "Connor," she said, embracing me. Then she turned to Maya with a warm smile. "And you must be Maya. I'm Patricia. We're so excited to meet you." "Thank you for having me, Mrs. Whitmore," Maya said, shaking her hand. "Please call me Patricia. Come in, come in." Richard is in the kitchen pretending to help with the turkey. My father appeared a moment later, wiping his hands on a dish towel. He was a tall man with salt and pepper hair and the kind of confident bearing that came from years of being respected in his profession. He'd performed surgery that morning, emergency appendectomy, and had just gotten home. "Sorry I'm late," he said, kissing my mother's cheek. Then he turned to Maya. "You must be the famous girlfriend we've heard so much about."
"Not that famous," Maya said with a laugh. "Maya Rodriguez." "Richard Whitmore, welcome to our home." The introduction seemed to go well, but I noticed my parents exchanging glances.
My mother's practiced smile, my father's appraising look. They were being polite, but I could tell they were taking inventory. Maya's clothes, her manner of speaking, the way she seemed slightly out of place in their pristine living room. "So Maya," my mother said as we settled in the family room, "Connor tells us you're in-law. What's your specialty?" "I work in criminal justice," Maya said carefully. "Oh, how interesting. Are you with a firm here in Phoenix?" "I work for the county." Father leaned forward. "Public defender's office? Something like that?" I could see my parents' expressions shift slightly. Public defenders were lawyers, technically, but they weren't exactly what my parents had in mind when they thought about successful legal careers. "That must be challenging work," my mother said diplomatically. "I imagine the hours are long and—" "The pite? Mom?" I interrupted. "What? I'm just making conversation." Maya seemed unfazed. "The work is rewarding in its own way, and I get to help people who might not otherwise have access to quality legal representation." "That's very noble," my father said, though his tone suggested he thought nobility was a poor substitute for ambition. The conversation continued. In this vein throughout the afternoon, my parents asking polite but probing questions, Maya giving vague but diplomatic answers. I could feel the tension building, though everyone was maintaining their best behavior. During dinner, things got worse. My parents started talking about their friend's children, David, Fleming's son who'd just made partner at a prestigious law firm, a Henderson girl who'd married a cardiologist, young Timothy Walsh who'd started his own investment company. Success runs in families, my father said, cutting into his turkey. Good breeding, good education, good connections, they all matter. Richard, my mother said gently, clearly sensing the awkwardness. "What?" I'm just saying that background matters. The people you surround yourself with shape who you become. Maya set down her fork. I think character matters more than background, Mr. Whitmore. Some of the most honorable people I know came from very humble beginnings. Of course character matters, my father replied. But character without opportunity, without proper guidance, without the right influences, well, it only goes so far. Dad, I said, a warning in my voice. What? I'm speaking from experience here. I've seen plenty of well-meaning people who simply didn't have the tools to succeed in the real world. Maya's jaw tightened slightly, but she kept her voice level. And I've seen plenty of people who had every advantage handed to them but still made terrible choices. Certainly, my father said. But statistically speaking, outcomes are largely determined by socioeconomic factors. Education, family stability, cultural capital, these things matter. Richard, my mother said again, more firmly this time. But my father was warming to his subject. Take the legal profession, for example. Public defenders, legal aid lawyers, they do important work. Don't get me wrong. But they're not exactly setting the world on fire, are they? They're not building anything lasting. They're building justice, Maya said quietly. Are they, or are they just processing cases through an overburdened system? I'm not trying to be harsh, Maya, but let's be realistic here. You're what, 28, 29? Still living in that apartment complex Connor described? Still scraping by on a government salary? Where's the upward mobility? Where's the plan for the future? The silence that followed was deafening. My mother looked mortified. I felt sick to my stomach, and Maya, ... Maya's expression was completely unreadable. I think, she said finally, that there might be some things about my situation that you don't understand. Help me understand then, my father said, because frankly I'm concerned about my son's future. Connor has worked hard to build a good life for himself. He has prospects, opportunities, and I'd hate to see him held back by someone who doesn't share his ambitions. Dad, stop, I said, but he held up a hand.
No. Connor, this is important.
You're at a crucial point in your life. The decisions you make now, the person you choose to be with, these choices will determine everything that comes after. Maya stood up slowly. Mr. Whitmore, I appreciate your concern for your son. I really do. But I think you're operating under some incorrect assumptions. What assumptions? You assume that because I work for the county, I'm somehow beneath your family's standards. You assume that because I don't drive a luxury car or wear designer clothes, I lack ambition. You assume that because I come from a different background, I'm going to hold Connor back. I never said you didn't have to say it. It's been clear from the moment I walked in here. My mother tried to intervene. Maya, please. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Has there been? Maya turned to look at her. Because it seems pretty clear to me that you've already decided I'm not good enough for your son. That's not true, my mother said weakly, isn't it? Maya's voice was calm, but I could hear the steel underneath. You've been evaluating me like a product all afternoon, cataloging my flaws, measuring my worth based on what I own and where I live. My father stood up too. Now wait just a minute. We've welcomed you into our home. We've been nothing but polite. Maya laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. Mr. Whitmore, you just told me to my face that I'm not good enough for your son, that I lack ambition, that I have no prospects, that I'm going to hold him back. In what world is that polite? I was being honest. Sometimes honesty's uncomfortable. You were being cruel, and you were being wrong. Wrong about what? Maya looked around the room at my mortified mother, my defensive father, at me sitting there in stunned silence. When she spoke again, her voice was different, colder, more authoritative. Wrong about who I am? Wrong about what I do?
Wrong?
About what I'm capable of. She walked over to her purse and pulled out a business card. She placed it on the table in front of my father. My name is Maya Rodriguez. I'm the district attorney for Maricopa County. I was elected to this position 2 years ago, making me the youngest DA in the state's history. I oversee a staff of 437 people. My office handles over 40,000 cases per year. Last year, we secured convictions. In 93% of the felony cases we prosecuted, the room was dead silent. My father picked up the business card with trembling hands. His face went through a series of expressions, confusion, disbelief, and then something that looked like physical pain. "This can't be right," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's right," Maya said calmly. "You can Google me if you'd like. Maya Rodriguez, District Attorney, Maricopa County. There are plenty of photos from my swearing-in ceremony 2 years ago." My mother had gone completely pale. But But you said you worked for the county. You said you were in criminal justice." "I did work for the county. I do work in criminal justice. I just didn't specify in what capacity." "Why?" I finally found my voice. "Why didn't you tell me?" Maya turned to look at me, and for the first time since she'd dropped her bombshell, her expression softened slightly. "What?" "To know who you really were, not who you'd be if you knew you were dating someone with power and influence." "That's not fair," I said, "isn't it?" "Connor, your father just spent 10 minutes explaining to me why I wasn't good enough for you. He told me I had no prospects, no ambition, no future. Do you think he would have said those things if he'd known who I really was?" I looked at my father, who was still staring at the business card like it might spontaneously combust. "This is impossible," he muttered. "You're too young. You don't look like. I mean, where did you go to school? What's your background?" "Harvard Law," Maya said. "Summa cum laude. Before that, I was a prosecutor in the Maricopa County Attorney's Office for 6 years. I specialized in white-collar crime and public corruption cases. I ran for DA on a platform of criminal justice reform and transparency in government." "But your clothes," my mother said weakly. "Your apartment, ... I shop at thrift stores because I don't care about designer labels. I live in that apartment complex because it's where I grew up. My mother still lives there, and I like being close to her." Maya's voice was getting sharper. "I'm sorry my lifestyle choices don't meet your standards of success." My father was frantically scrolling through his phone. "Rodriguez, District Attorney," he was muttering. "Here, ... Here's an article from the Arizona Republic. Youngest DA in state history, promises reform." That's you? That's me? "It says here you won the election with 63% of the vote. 64%, actually. But who's counting?" My father looked up from his phone, his face now completely red. I don't understand. Why would you let me ... Why? Didn't you correct me when you were what, Mr. Whitmore? When you were showing me exactly what kind of person you are? I was trying to protect my son." "From what?" "From a woman who's dedicated her career to public service. From someone who's spent the last 8 years fighting crime and corruption in this county." My mother was staring at Maya like she was seeing her for the first time. "You prosecuted the Morrison case, didn't you? The city council corruption scandal." Maya nodded. "I did. Secured convictions against 4 council members and 2 lobbyists. That is actually how I made my name in this county." "I remember reading about that prosecutor," my mother said slowly. "The articles said she was brilliant, relentless. They called her a rising star. Some people did, yes." My father was still, scrolling through his phone. "It says here you're considered a potential candidate for Attorney General. You've been mentioned as a future gubernatorial prospect. Politics isn't really my focus right now. More interested in doing the job I was elected to do." "It's the job you were elected to do," my father repeated. "Jesus Christ, Maya. I just told the district attorney of Maricopa County that she had no prospects." "You did. I told you that you were going to hold my son back from success. You did that too." My father sat down heavily in his chair. "I've never been more embarrassed. In my life, you should be embarrassed," Maya said. "But not because of my job title. You should be embarrassed because you judged me based on my appearance, my address, and your own narrow definition of success. You should be embarrassed because you treated me like I wasn't good enough to breathe the same air as your family." "Maya," I said, "I had no idea. I mean, I knew you were smart, I knew you were capable, but I never imagined." "I know you didn't. That was the point. But why? Why keep it a secret from me?" She turned to face me fully. "Because I've been burned before, Connor. I've dated men who were interested in Maya Rodriguez, the district attorney. Men who saw me as a trophy, a connection, a way to advance their own careers. I wanted to know if you could care about Maya Rodriguez, the person. Of course I care. About you as a person? Do you? Because for the past few weeks, I've watched you getting increasingly uncomfortable with my mysterious job, my secretive behavior, my modest lifestyle. I've watched you making excuses for me to your friends, worrying about what your parents would think. She was right, and we both knew it. I had been worried. I had been making excuses. I saw the same doubts in you that I heard from your father tonight, Maya continued. The same assumptions, the same judgments. You were just too polite to voice them. That's not true, isn't it, Connor? Be honest with me. Were you proud to introduce me to your parents tonight? The question hung in the air between us. I wanted to say yes, but the word wouldn't come. I thought I was, I said finally. But maybe I was more worried about their reaction than I should have been. Maybe you were? My mother cleared her throat. Maya, I owe you an apology. We both do. What we said tonight, the way we treated you, it was inexcusable. It was honest, Maya replied. Ugly, but honest. At least now I know where I stand. You stand very high, my father said quietly. Higher than I realized. Higher than I deserve, frankly. Mr. Whitmore, I don't need your approval. I never did. I have the approval of the voters of this county, the respect of my colleagues, and the satisfaction of knowing I'm making a difference in people's lives. Your opinion of my worth doesn't factor into that equation. I understand that now. You, because an hour ago, you were lecturing me about the importance of background and breeding. You were telling me that I wasn't good enough for your son because I didn't meet your standards of success. I was wrong. You were. But here's the thing. You weren't wrong because I turned out to be the district attorney. You were wrong because judging people based on their appearance, their address, or their perceived social status is always wrong. If I had been a public defender, if I had been a legal aid lawyer, if I had been exactly who you thought I was, I still wouldn't have deserved to be treated the way you treated me tonight. My father nodded slowly. You're absolutely right. I know I am. There was a long silence. Finally, my mother spoke up. Will you stay for dessert? I made pumpkin pie. Maya looked at her, then at my father, then at me. I think I've had enough. For one evening, she walked over to where she'd left her purse. Connor, I'll catch an Uber home. I think you and your family have some things to discuss. Maya. Wait, I said, standing up. Don't leave like this. How should I leave? I don't know. Not angry. Not hurt. She studied my face for a long moment. I'm not angry, Connor. I'm disappointed. In your parents, yes, but mostly in you. In me. You've been dating me for 2 months. You've gotten to know me, spent time with me, seen who I am as a person. And yet you still doubted whether I was good enough for your family. I never said that. You didn't have to. It was written all over your face every time the subject came up. She was right, and I hated that she was right. What happens now? I asked.
Now you figure out what kind of person you want to be? Do you want to be someone who judges people based on their job title and their bank account? Or do you want to be
someone who sees people for who they really are? I want to be better than I was tonight, then be better. Maya walked to the front door, then turned back one last time. And Connor. Next time you're wondering why I was so secretive about my work, remember this evening.
I'll remember how your family treated me when they thought I was nobody important.
Remember how you let them. The door closed behind her with a soft click. My parents and I sat in silence for a long time. Finally, my father spoke. I think he said slowly that I just made the biggest mistake of my life. We all did, I replied. But as I sat there in my childhood home, surrounded by the trappings of success that had always seemed so important, I realized something else. Maya Rodriguez, the district attorney, the rising political star, the woman who could have been the future governor of Arizona, had chosen to be with me when she thought I was just a marketing guy from Tempe. She had chosen me for who I was, not what I could do for her, and I had chosen to doubt her because of what she couldn't do for me. The irony wasn't lost on me. In trying to protect myself from being with someone who might hold me back, I had pushed away someone who could have lifted me up in ways I never imagined. I pulled out my phone and started typing a text to Maya. Then I deleted it. Then I started typing again. Some mistakes, I realized, might be too big to fix with words, but maybe If I was willing to become the kind of person who deserved a second chance, there might still be hope. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.